tie and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
Yes, no rest for the wicked. David Whiting is not on holidays. He's here with you. Hello.
I never thought of myself as wicked, but
Well,
fits.
that's just the saying,
fits.
really, isn't it? But
Yeah.
it does seem that everyone else is trotting off into summerdom, and you're very good. You're here.
Oh, thank you very much.
Pleased to have you. And if you would like to talk to David, 1300 222 774 is the number for any of your legal questions. But before we get to those, and I actually should say I've also got a text here from B just saying, this is directed at me, David, not to you. So much for the open line. We did want to take you to Queensland, so the open line did get squeezed, but if you would like to talk about any of the issues that we've discussed this morning or anything else, I promise that just before 11 o'clock I will. If you are on the board, I will take your call. There is my commitment. So B, if you've got a burning issue, please do call just before 11. But David Whiting is with you right now. And David, you had some homework.
I did. Kim from Mount Martha rang. Kim lives in a property where there's a power pole out the front, and from the power pole, services go to her and her neighbours on both sides. So if you like, there are 3 lines going from the pole to the fascia panels in the 3 properties. And she says, well, if I redevelop my property, what are my issues? And the question was, who owns them and who's responsible for them? And I can tell you that it's covered by the Electricity Safety Act of 1998, Section 83.
Right.
And it all depends upon the point of supply. So if you think of a water meter, if you think of water coming to your home, it normally comes from a main buried somewhere in the middle of the street, but the meter's on the front inside your property somewhere. But the technical point of supply is way out there on the meter. Is way out
On the
there
street.
is way out under the street somewhere. So that's your issue. So the issue is really, what's the point of supply? In a case of an underground line, it's the point at which the line crosses the property boundary. And in the case of an overhead line, the first point of connection to the line on the land. So that's the fascia. So there are implied easements contained in the Electricity Supply Safety Act that essentially says that there's an implied easement from the pole over your property, through your neighbour's property, to the fascia board. So
what does that mean in practical terms?
In practical terms, you don't have the right to arbitrarily determine that the electricity company takes the cables that supply your neighbours from across your property. It's an exercise in negotiation as to how they might be supplied differently.
So if you want to renovate or build a new part of your house, you will have to go to the power company and negotiate with them about moving the lines.
Yes. Yep.
And bear the cost?
I would suggest that that's probably the case, yes.
Did that surprise you?
At the end of the day, no. No, I suppose at the end of the day, if you look at the number of power lines, if you wander around the streets, you'll see that there are often 2, sometimes 3 properties served from most poles, because there isn't a pole in front of every house. There's a pole.
And nor would we want a pole in front of every house, probably.
No, you're now one of those people who's now talking about we should all go underground, which isn't any cheaper.
Or maybe I'm just talking about rationalising poles.
Oh, okay.
Diane's joined us from Melbourne. Hi, Diane.
Hi.
What was your question for David?
David, I rent a townhouse in a quiet suburb because I work from home. There's an apartment above me which was sold, and they started renovating it 10 weeks ago. They've jackhammered out every double brick wall and 2 bathrooms. I've had the jackhammering noise for 7 weeks, from 7 in the morning till 5 at night, and I've been told there's nothing I can do about it. It's having a terrible impact on my health. I have terrible headaches, can't sleep, and now I'm getting chest infection from
There will be
the rubble and
regulations.
dust.
There'll be regulations in the council about building noise and the hours in which it take place.
Yes,
it's probably
they say that's
lawful.
legal.
Probably
They
lawful.
say it is legal.
Yep.
But can I do anything about not being able to even stay in my property in that time? The noise is above 95 decibels. I can't even stand to be there. And I haven't been able to do any work. And I've been told, I've spoken to the landlord, the owner of my place, and she says, look, you can move if you don't like it. She's only interested if there's cracks in the walls because she'll get compensated.
She's interested in her structure, not in the impact it's having on the tenant.
Yeah.
Diane, I don't believe that there is. I mean, otherwise there would never be any development at all. There would never be a house built next door. There would never be a renovation upstairs or downstairs. I suppose I might be trying to find out if there is something that could reduce the noise level. I'm amazed that it's taken 10 weeks to do all the work, and you're suggesting
it's going until February. It's going until February.
Gosh, how big an apartment is it?
It's 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a large living area, and a big kitchen and dining.
But Diane, there's a difference between the jackhammering and jackhammering will be part of the renovation.
The jackhammering was first 7 weeks.
Yes.
They've been using those high-pitched saws to cut tiles and bricks and things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's happening at the moment, and there's a grinding machine thing. And then the hammering has started now. The hammering.
Unless you can prove that it's an unreasonable noise, and we do make allowances for building noise, I don't know that you've got anywhere to go, Diane.
Diane, I'm sorry about that's sort of, I mean, it's actually become, David, it's become a much bigger issue, hasn't it, since working from home about making noise and renovations?
It has, but over the last couple of years, I've had some clients where, we used to carpet apartments. We're now into timber floors. Timber floors
with acoustic layering, might
generally
I say?
No, but timber floors without acoustic layering makes an incredible racket for people downstairs.
I am guilty of all of that. I moved recently into an apartment with where I put in timber floors with appropriate layering, I should say.
Yes.
But it was the laying of the floors, and I was just so aware that so many people were working from home, and it was only 3 hours. But they were terrible 3 hours.
Yeah,
and I just felt...
And what Diane's got is a terrible 7 weeks.
Yes, I know. I don't know what you do. I mean, you can go and maybe work from a library or something, but...
But then you also have, and in another case that I'm familiar with, they were pulling up marble floors to put down timber. So
oh, gosh.
Can you imagine the digging up of the marble floors?
Yeah. I know, as you say, though, no one would ever do anything if we couldn't, but I do feel people's pain. 1300 222 774 is the number. There are actually a couple of lines spare if you have a question for David Whiting. Pat in Moonee Ponds has got a question. Hi, Pat. Pat, are you there?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Yes.
Far away, Pat.
Oh, thanks, David. I've got a problem with a fence, just like a lot. I gave a letter for discussion to my neighbour. Now, they haven't come back. So, can I get when I go to a fencer, can I get him to do costs for both sides? Because my place is clear, and as I said in the letter, I'd pay half the cost of the new fence.
What you want, Pat, is your fencer to give you a figure for the clearing and a figure for the construction.
This is because we've got basically trees or shrubs or whatever pushing the fence.
On one side, pushing the fence over. So you get, and what you do on the fencing notice, you say to your neighbour, I'm happy to meet half the cost of the removal and replacement of the fence, but the preparatory work on your side has to be paid for by you.
That's exactly what I said.
Yep.
And also the container wall, I'd like that because...
So there's how big, you're looking for a retaining wall, are you?
Also, like, to stop their dirt.
At that stage you start, how high do you want the retaining wall to be?
Well, I don't know. Their dirt is 30 centimetres high, and it's rotted all the bottom of the palings and the bottom of the fence too.
And is it because they've built up their garden beds or because your garden is lower?
Yes.
Well, then you would also want all of that removed at the same time. I'm reluctant to suggest that it's simply because a garden bed is risen that it's appropriate to put in a retaining wall. Really, you just want them to put in some structure that keeps their garden bed off the plinth.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want,
yes.
A structure.
So I would be asking for that to be built into the fencing quote.
Yeah. Now, if they don't...
if you can't strike a deal, Pat, you're off to the magistrates' court.
Yeah,
and my difficulty is going to be that you might be better off agreeing to meet the cost of the fencing with your neighbour than you would be enjoying...
The whole cost of all their 12-foot-high shrubs.
Pat, it's a lesser of evils. Do I want the fence fixed or do I want justice?
Gosh, it's always a lesser of evils, isn't it, when it comes to fencing? It is one of the perennial issues. Pat, good luck with that one. Sorry, Gina in Ballarat. Hi, Gina.
Oh, hi. Hi.
Good morning.
Myself off speaker.
Thank you.
I was driving on the Westgate Bridge about a week ago, and I was not exactly sideswiped, but certainly nudged by a very large commercial truck. Absolutely, and there was a bang, and anyway, couldn't stop, absolutely, right at the very top of the Westgate Bridge. Anyway, drove on. I managed to get the number and the name of the business. And later on, I got in touch with them. I spoke to the man, the transport manager at the company. And he was quite nice, actually. I have to say, he was quite pleasant. But since then, I've sent them a quote, and I've heard nothing more about it. And I'm not really quite sure what I can do.
Gina,
I have been to the
I would
police.
be doing two things. I would be talking to the Westgate Bridge Authority about seeing whether there is a security camera image that you could use as evidence that the nudge took place. Because what you're coming down to is I said, she said.
Yes, exactly.
And that would be... And what's the cost of repairs, Gina?
$3,000.
And do you have insurance for it?
No, I only have third-party insurance because my car probably actually isn't really worth $3,000. Like, it's an old car, but that's not really the point.
Oh, no, it is the point.
Is
it is the point. Right?
Well, the point is it's worth a lot more than $3,000 to me, the car. I don't want to have to go and buy a new car.
No, or even a replacement car. You've got a problem, Gina. You've got to sit down and do the math. You run to the math. You've got a quote for $3,000 to fix a car that isn't worth $3,000. All of a sudden, your claim has to be the high. So if I was being an absolute bastard, Gina, your loss is the value of the car, I'd call it $2,500, less the cost of the wreck and the refund of the registration, and you'll probably find that your actual loss might be $2,000. It might be $1,500. If the car was, if you got the money for the wreck and you got your refund of your of your registration insurance, you might find that your loss was far less than your quote, and that's the problem, is that you've got a vehicle which doesn't sound like an economic repair.
But is that Gina's problem, or is that the problem of the person who sideswiped her and their insurance company?
I'll turn into the magistrate now, and I'm saying, in a monetary sense, Gina, how much worse off are you? You've got a car which isn't worth $3,000, but you want me... So it's got a net value to you, you'd be worse off, but you've got a car that's worth $1,700 and you want to spend $3,000 on getting it fixed. Yes,
that's right. But to me, it's worth a lot more, because if I have to get rid of the car and buy another one for like $15,000, $20,000, then that's a big difference. I mean, I obviously don't expect the company to sort of supply me with a different car, but I do think that to be able to cause that amount of damage to my property and just sort of walk away from it and say, well, it's not my problem, that doesn't seem to be...
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it is their problem. The real question is, in an objective sense, how do I quantify your loss?
Yeah.
And
if they won't play ball and you have to go on to a magistrate's court.
Yes.
Yeah, but you'd be trying to get them to play ball with
you
just repairing it before.
So I would start with the camera so that you can prove the evidence of the damage.
Yeah, and it doesn't become a he says, she says.
Yes.
Gina, good luck. Bronwyn in Flemington. Hi, Bronwyn.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Look, I'm just calling. I entered into a contract with a search engine and website company for 24 months. 14 months into the contract, we were advised that, in fact, the platform they'd built the website on was obsolete. So negotiated with them to actually upgrade the platform to one that was appropriate, and they said they would do that if we would enter into a new 24-month contract. Things have sort of gone a bit sour since then because the website didn't function correctly, but we completed the 24-month contract and then wanted to cease their using them, and they're now saying we still owe them for the initial contract that we entered into.
How much a month are we talking about, Bronwyn?
So initially the first was $1,100 a month, and then the new contract became $1,220 a month.
It makes no sense to me. I would be suggesting that they abandoned the first one because they said we can't do this anymore, but if you do this one, we'll give you this fee.
And that's exactly the understanding that we had.
Well, no, I tear it with the understandings. I don't know what an understanding is. There's an agreement which isn't properly reduced to writing, but it wasn't an understanding. Your view is that you reached an agreement with them when they came to you and said, we can't perform anymore for reasons that are external to the contract we have. We can't do that anymore. Let's do this instead. So that's where I'm at. If you're looking to give VCAT a job, then you would go to VCAT for a declaration that you don't owe them the money.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good on you, Bronwyn. Axel in Hastings. Axel, good morning.
Hey, good morning to both of you. Question for David. David, my brother died a few months ago. He in Berlin, Germany, living as a German with a German passport. He left us a debt of about $150,000, and his wife and his 2 children, the only next of kin, already have rejected the inheritance. Now, according to German law, I understand I'm second order of inheritance, and so might be my children here and my children's children, even though all of us have an Australian passport and no dual citizenship. So my question is, do I actually fall under the German inheritance law, or do I really need to go through the process and fill in forms and pay fees and reject
Axel,
the inheritance?
I can tell you what the answer is here.
Great.
The answer here would be that all you can inherit is the net estate. You don't get the assets and the liabilities. You end up with something in the event that the assets are greater than the liabilities. If the assets are less than the liabilities, then there's nothing that comes to you, but the debt doesn't attract to you. So,
but that is the Australian law, David, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I can't see that the German law can require you to indemnify effectively your brother for debts you didn't incur.
According to the German law, it can.
But is Axel David subject to the German law, given his
That is
residence
my question,
in another country with another passport?
I didn't obey my passport.
That's a long period of homework, Axel. Why don't I take it to homework? All right?
Good on you, Axel.
Things move slowly.
Yes, okay. Well, there's a little bit of international homework for you, David, but interesting question, I guess. Robin in Black Rock. Hi, Robin.
Oh, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I entered into the purchase of some tickets to an event being held at the end of February here in Victoria via a very well-known ticket and event booking agency. It came to my attention shortly afterwards that our son in Berlin had bought us tickets in a better category for the same event as Christmas present. So this agency offers a resale option.
Yes.
We elected to sell our tickets, and I was informed they were sold on the 8th of October. I was to provide bank account and ID details. I duly did, and I have done that on at least 10 occasions, and each time they reject my scanned documents and ask for additional ID. I've rejected that because this was all happening in the middle of the big cyber scares, and said to them, it is perfectly legible. I'd like my money, please. The ticket agency uses another agency to do the
payments,
bookkeeping.
Yep.
And I'm getting nowhere. I get, every time I write to them, I get a reply from somebody else. telling
Robin,
me
I would be talking
I haven't been compliant.
I would be talking to Consumer Affairs and the ACCC.
I've spoken to Consumer Affairs. They've asked me to be patient. My patience is exhausted. What was the other agency you mentioned, David?
Consumer Affairs and the ACCC, so Consumer and Competition and Consumer Commission. Yeah.
Okay, I'll get on to them.
And they won't be any faster, Robin, I've got to tell you. It's either that or you issue proceedings in VCAT for your money.
But at least it's another potential avenue. I've got a text here, David, from Sue, who's a probate genealogist. I'm not quite sure what that is, but saying German law and other European countries, one can inherit debt.
Oh, well, that's making my homework even more interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it? What? Gee, I'm glad that we don't have that rule in this country. Jeff in Geelong. Hi, Jeff. Jeff.
Hello, yes.
Yeah, hi.
Jeff.
Yes. Yeah, look, we've been having a dispute with a builder that's been going on for a bit over 2 years now. He took around about $20,000 and never started to build the house or anything. So we've been to the DRV and he didn't show up to that hearing. We then went to VCAT. He didn't show up to that. VCAT have made an order for him to repay the money plus interest plus costs.
Yes.
But he still hasn't complied with that. So, and VCAT can't enforce him to pay it. So what's our next steps?
You transfer the judgment to the Magistrates Court.
Okay,
And
yes.
you use the Magistrate Court processes for enforcement. And they send the sheriff out.
Would we need to get a lawyer for that?
The forms on the Magistrates Court website are pretty good, and there's a direction in the VCAT website about moving a judgment to the Magistrates Court. So the enforcement processes aren't at VCAT. They use the court ones, but you've got to register the judgment at the court first.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Pleasure.
Good on you, Jeff. I'm going to squeeze one more in just quickly. Joe in Melton. Hi, Joe.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Joe.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Hi, David. Just a simple one for you. I sustained an injury, a shoulder injury at my gym at a session supervised by a personal trainer employed by the gym. And I put a claim in, or I did an incident report, and they're really duck shoving to try and reimburse me. All I'm after is costs for physiotherapists and a massage. Initially, I put a receipt in for a massage for $50, and the next thing I received in my email was a settlement letter, and it was fairly legal too. So, I mean, they've sort of indicated that
Joe, if you were able to establish that the injury that you suffered was caused by their negligence, you have a claim against them for the cost of fixing you.
Yes.
Just because it happened at the gym doesn't automatically mean that it's their fault.
No, how do you prove their negligence?
I had a friend who had one of those, like a wobble bar, a steel pole, in a gym, and he was working on that, and at that stage he was 70-something, and it was a tad vigorous and caused him a few problems. I come along and say that would be lack of supervision. But if you were, for example, attending a yoga class and you weren't as limber as you thought you were, I don't see that as generally speaking, wouldn't have thought that is negligence. So the question has to be, Joe, are you able to establish that the failing was a result of their negligence rather than something else?
Joe, thank you. And that clearly is the job. Marcus, gosh, my brain's not working very well. David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
And I look forward to hearing the answer of the German.
Axel from Hastings.
Yeah, and as someone said, when you said the wheels turn slowly, Axel, was that a pun intended?
No,
not at all. Not at all. Anyway, we will see you shortly. Thank you very much. And if this is your last for the year, then thank you.
And have a great Christmas.
Yeah,
Bye.
same to you. And we will definitely see you next year.